This is the My Inner Therapist podcast. I am your host and empowerment coach, Nikole Seals. I believe the life that you want shows up when you expect it. When you take the time to gain self-awareness into why you do what you do. Whether you're just curious or you have a growing desire to be better, or you can't tolerate your life circumstances for another day, then I encourage you to take this journey with us. And like any road trip, you'll need to bring a few things. Come with an open mind, a sense of humor, and the courage to stand in your truth. We'll be standing right there with you because none of us are perfect. The goal is to laugh and learn our way to becoming our own inner therapist, to heal our wounds and create an ideal life. Join in the discussion by sharing your comments and thoughts. And if you're interested in having a free anonymous coaching session with me here on the show, you can contact me directly at hello@NikoleSeals.com, and that's Nikole with a K. Be sure to subscribe to the show and rate each episode on your favorite podcast app. To learn more, visit my website, NikoleSeals.com, for access to articles, videos, and self-help programs. You can also follow me on Instagram at My Inner Therapist or subscribe to my YouTube channel. You'll find all these links in the show's description. All right, enough with the intro. Let the session begin. Hello, all, and welcome to the My Inner Therapist podcast. I am your host and empowerment coach, Nikole Seals, and today's topic is choosing not to spend time with your family. It's my holiday topic. And I think we associate family with the holidays, so it seemed very appropriate for us to be having this discussion, seeing as we've officially entered into the holiday season. I think the minute that we start seeing commercial ads for toys and gifts that none of us really need and go into stores and, the minute I saw pumpkins come out, you start to, right, that's our trigger. We start to realize, oh, the holiday seasons are here. And there's the smell of cinnamon everywhere, which I'm not mad at. But what I find so interesting is that the triggers that we see and experience really pull us into this place of thinking about the holidays, and that then taps into the emotions that we associate with the holidays. And we start experiencing those emotions before the holiday activities have really even got underway. So what we really want to talk about is as we practice self-awareness and as we practice being the observer of ourselves, we are looking to try to find those behaviors or those beliefs that we hold that are not serving us, that are contributing to our stress and our anxiety and our depression, and we're looking to change those. So we have to really practice observing ourselves and those things that trigger us. And I know that the holidays are a trigger for a lot of people. So what I want to talk about is I want to look at our associations that we have with the holidays, and that's specifically looking at our experiences and the emotions we associate with those experiences. And I want to hone in on three areas that I think come up for everybody when we talk about the holidays. And I know this is true for me. I know this is true for my family and friends. I also know that this is true for many of my clients. We really tend to think about three things when it comes to holidays, including Thanksgiving and Christmas. And let's throw in New Year's Eve as well. And that's in eating and drinking, which is, I made that number one because it's my number one. That's typically what I think of when it comes to the holidays is, I eat really clean. I have a very healthy diet, and the holidays have always been this fantastic excuse to overindulge, to really dive in, to just celebrate and enjoy food because I love food. So this is always this for me. So this is going to be my area for me where I'm really going to become the observer of my behavior. And we're also going to look at the areas of shopping and in the areas of family. So let's go back to eating and drinking. Eating and drinking can often be associated with good, positive emotions, right? We have the experience of being around people and we're enjoying the foods that we have. And if we have an addiction to sugar and caffeine or alcohol or carbs, then as we indulge during the holidays, we are feeding our addiction, right? And feeding our addiction feels good. That's the thing that we want to become aware of. We want to become an observer and look to see if we are enabling ourselves by giving ourselves permission to indulge in something that we know that we have become to depend on to feel good. People often associate certain foods and often associate drinking with feeling better. They associate it with an emotion. And food has become the thing that triggers good feelings. And that's an unhealthy relationship because we want to get to the place where we are able to bring about our own good emotions without having to be dependent on food. So as we think about eating and drinking and the emotions that we associate that, there's the good stuff, there's the fun, exciting stuff, but then that always is followed by the negative emotions that we have. And that's because eating and drinking offer us a reward. And that reward is temporary. All of our rewards are temporary. There's the reward of drinking and getting numb to the things that you're stressed about and relaxed and feeling a little loose, and you go out and you have a good time. And then that wears off. The same thing happens with food. We eat something that we love, and then later that wears off. So our reward is always temporary, which is why we continue to seek more and more and more of it. But once that feeling goes away, that good feeling goes away, it's replaced by the negative emotions that come up for us. And those are often guilt. We feel guilty about indulging in the first place. We feel shameful because we can't seem to get it together and we can't seem to overcome this addiction that we have, or this need for sugar, or our fixation on Starbucks holiday coffee drinks. And I'm talking to a couple specific people out there. You know who you are. And then also, too, just the disappointment and feeling as if we failed ourselves once again and we didn't stick to our diet and we really had been on a good streak. And then it just took one holiday party that, really set it off for us. And we were back on our unhealthy eating habits. So when we think about the experience of eating, we just want to become more aware of the emotions that come up for us when we think about that. And if you find yourself having more negative emotions, you're feeling more negative as you think about that, that is a good sign that that's an area where you really need to start making some change, where you really need to start behaving in a different way and making different choices. And at the root, you really need to start evaluating your belief system about that. We're going to talk more about that in a minute. I want to move on to shopping, because shopping is another big one. Shopping is, again, something that can become addictive, and it provides a temporary reward, right? It feels good. We're out buying things for the people that we love, and it feels exciting thinking, I'm going to get them the perfect gift. And so we have to recognize that for what it is. It's part of our behavior that we buy into to feel good about ourselves. It is directly correlated to the emotions of feeling good about ourselves. And we walk around with this void of not feeling whole, of feeling somewhat empty. And we've convinced ourselves that buying things, whether it's for other people or for ourselves, makes us feel better and it makes us feel whole. But you can probably think of somebody who has everything and they're still really unhappy, or those people who are incredibly wealthy and they're miserable. And that's because the reward of monetary gain and accumulating things has not brought them long-lasting contentment. It has just brought them temporary reward. So the negative emotions that show up when that dopamine fades away and we're no longer feeling good about the experience is that we tend to experience a tremendous amount of pressure, right? A lot of pressure and conformity to be a part of this mass consumer idea that is associated with the holiday, that we must buy. And marketing, you have to give it to people who are behind the scenes and creating these marketing campaigns, because they've convinced us that, oh, you'll feel so much better because you're giving. And when you give, it feels really good. And the reality is that giving does feel good. But giving does not have to come in the form of a beautifully wrapped package. We don't have to go out and buy things for other people, because we're essentially trying to buy other people's love and approval. And we have to be aware of that, right? We have to be aware of that emptiness. We have to be aware if we're seeking love and approval. And that's, again, when you want to step back and you want to become the observer, and you want to ask yourself, really, what is my motivation behind buying so many gifts for my kids, or buying things that I really cannot afford for family members? Because, and maybe what'll come up for you is, I don't want to disappoint them. It's just what we do. They'll be so upset if I don't show up with something. I don't want them to think that I don't have money to buy things. There's so many things that come up for us. And what's most important is for us to acknowledge that. And again, note this as an area where we are probably holding on to some beliefs that are just not serving us. Okay, in this next area is the really kind of the subject of our whole show today, is in talking about family. And, well, you may not necessarily have an addiction to your family. A lot of us definitely are addicted to the types of engagement that we have with our family. And that could go both ways. You could come from a very loving, caring, warm, supportive home environment. And you are just, you crave that, especially if you've moved away from home or you've been separated from family members, and you crave that. And you crave love and connection because you have these fantastic memories and these wonderful emotions associated with them. So, of course, you want more of that. So you do have people out there who really love and enjoy the holidays to be able to spend time with their family. And I love that I just said that, where I completely omitted myself from that. Like, I did not include that as like we love to be with our family. The work never ends, right? We are constantly evolving as I evolve here on the show with you. So yes, I recognize fully that this is one of my areas. This is one of my areas where I know I hold on to beliefs, and in the past have held on to beliefs that really did not serve me. I'm also aware, too, that not only for me, but many of my clients have family environments that are incredibly toxic and are unhealthy. So you have the flip side of the loving, caring, supportive family, where you have the family that engages in really harmful communication with one another. There may be resentment. There may also be past hurt that has never been resolved. There may be the sense of failure. One of the things when I was working with families, what was always so surprising to me is how parents would go in debt to provide this Christmas for their kids that they really couldn't afford. And what I realized is that it was more about the sense of feeling like they had failed that was driving them to then go and do something as harmful as putting themselves in debt. And there were times I was able to have this really empathetic conversation and understand that sense of failure and what it must be like for them, but to also identify what a powerful learning opportunity this could be for their kids by having a conversation with their children about what they were going through and about what they were feeling and how to overcome that as a family. Because I'll tell you what, kids, they'd rather have their parents and their parents' time than they would gifts. And I'm a firm believer in that, and I don't think that there is any child out there who, well, there probably are some entitled kid who would say differently, but it really is deep down inside, every child craves the love and attention of their parent at their core. So when, as a parent, we tend to buy into these ideas that our love needs to show up in other forms. And that kind of comes behind this idea of I'm failing my kids. And you also have this whole experience of loss that comes up for a lot of people at the holidays, because maybe they lost a loved one around this time of the year. And so it triggers the emotion of loneliness or the absence of that person. There's a void there. Or maybe they experienced a traumatic divorce, or maybe their partner left. So there's a sense of abandonment that comes up for them at the holidays, because this is not what they imagined that their lives and their future holidays were going to be. So we have to really take time to step away from our lives and look at it from the perspective, and you hear me say this all the time, of being non-judgmental, of being loving, and also of just being somewhat disconnected, of looking at your life as really someone stepping in to just document and record what they're seeing. Because we need to take the emotion out of it in that moment to really identify what it is about those experiences that are not working for us and that need to change. And what it really comes down to are the beliefs that are motivating us to do the things that don't feel good, that cause us some suffering. And so what I wanted to suggest to you on the show today is that as we do that, and as we become the observer, and we start to see these areas that we really want to work on and change, I want you to think about this, and I want you to consider this, because this is probably the thing that's going to bring you the most relief. And that's recognizing that there is a possibility to opt out, that you yourself have the choice and the ability to make this decision of removing yourself, whether it's from this tradition or from this practice or from this type of engagement. It is empowering, and it also is a fantastic way to put yourself back into the driver's seat of your life, to opt out and say that I'm just going to discontinue this. I'm just not going to do it anymore. I'm not obligated to engage in any of these type of experiences or behaviors anymore. It's especially important to do this as we not only work on our self-awareness, but that we also practice our self-care. And self-care is directly correlated to our self-love, the love that we have for ourselves. So the more that we practice taking care of ourselves, the more that we feel like we love ourselves and that we're worthy of love of others. And so in practicing self-care and taking a minute to kind of evaluate what's going on in your life when it comes to these particular experiences, you need to ask yourself if these experiences are leaving you feeling drained, leaving you with a sense of resentment, or you're feeling regretful. You also need to decide if there is this toxicity that comes with the experience, right? So our toxic experience tend to cause us to feel almost like self-poisoned, right? Like we've poisoned ourselves by having this experience. And the way that it works for us with the brain is that when we experience toxic, say like you have a toxic engagement with a family member, and there's a verbal altercation, and people are bringing up past events and just really trying to, hurt one another by making allegations and just demeaning and really trying to break one another down. This is typically like all in view of other family members that this is happening. So then there's, collateral damage to just being an observer of this going on. And what happens for everybody in that moment is that the brain's reaction to that kind of toxicity is to restrict its function. It slows down what it's doing, what it needs to be doing in order to protect itself. Just as if your immune system was under attack and your immune system needs to perform so many things to protect your body, and when your immune system comes under attack, it gets very restricted. So, and that's what stress does to our immune system, right? It completely impairs its ability to do its job. And the stress of being in a toxic environment does the same thing to the brain, restricts the brain's function. So we're less likely then to experience joy and peace and excitement and love. And we're far more likely to experience the emotions of depression and anger. And that's because in this reduced state of function, we are far more vulnerable to the emotions that are strongest for us, that we have a more stronger association with in that experience. So if you're arguing with your brother-in-law, or you and your sister are going at it, and you have historically associated negative emotions with that, when you are caught in that toxic experience, your brain is going to be completely overwhelmed by those negative emotions. And you're not going to feel like you're going to be able to control them. They're going to control you at that point, and they're going to consume you. So it becomes vitally important that you prevent those experiences from happening. And the best prevention is opting out, right? So consider this. As you head into this holiday season, I want you to consider the idea of giving yourself permission. I want you to consider giving yourself permission to either skip it, to opt out, to say no. And if you really love the holidays and you want to go out and you want to engage in a way that makes you feel more connected, that makes you feel more loving, that also too makes you feel valued and is really building up your self-worth, then go and create those experiences. And that could be through creating a new tradition. Maybe you go out and do volunteer work. Maybe you really make a choice to spend time with those people who refuel your tank, right? Who energize you, who are supportive and positive. In order for us to change the experiences that cause us the stress and the anxiety that are toxic or that are feeding into our addictions, we need to make different choices. We need to engage in different behaviors. And that means that we need to be selective. We need to practice self-care and reserve our energy for positive experiences only. And I know as I'm saying this, many of you are like, oh my God, my family's never, I'll hear it forever if I try to skip out on my family. Yes, you will, because you will continue to be stuck in that experience, experiencing the same emotions again. The only way that you're going to free yourself is by doing something that is different. And by doing something that is different, it is going to feel uncomfortable. It is going to feel like you can't pull it off. It's going to feel like this is never going to work. That's what comes up every time we try to do something new and different. Because our brain wants to keep doing what it knows. It wants to keep running the same program. And so when we try to create a new program and a new way of being, it is going to feel uncomfortable. That's the reality. But that discomfort goes away and can be replaced with a sense of empowerment and gratitude, because you no longer have to be in an experience that is making you feel unloved and unworthy and unappreciated and stressed and disappointed. And instead, you can create the holiday that you want. You can create the holiday that you know that your family truly desires. And essentially, you can give yourself the best gift of all. And that's just giving yourself permission. Permission to do things differently. And permission to have different experiences. Just gift yourself a new way of being. All right, I do hope you enjoy your holidays. Okay, that's it for today. Remember, you're not lost. You're just being held hostage by your old way of thinking. Until next time, friends.